Okay, you see where this says Federal Reserve Note right up here at the top? Federal Reserve Note. Doesn't say United States dollar. And every single bill in circulation says the same thing. Why is that? I mean, everybody says, oh, they just print the money. They just print the money. And yeah, they print the money, but they don't just print the money. They sell it to the Federal Reserve Bank. This doesn't say United States dollar because it's not a United States dollar. It's a Federal Reserve note. The Federal Reserve Bank has been given an unconstitutional monopoly on currency and credit. These notes are printed at the Bureau of Printing and Engraving for the United States government treasury, but they don't issue it. When the Federal Reserve Bank needs notes for a bank because there's a deposit run and they have to have the cash at the bank, they send an order to the U.S. Treasury for, let's make it even, $10,100 bills. That's $1 million. And with the order for the $10,001 million, they include a check. It used to be $350. It's probably now $450. 4.5 cents a note, the cost of paper, ink, and labor to print the notes. So the U.S. Treasury takes receipt of between $350 and $450. It prints up the $10,100 notes, or of any denomination, but we're using $100 bills here, and then it delivers them to the Federal Reserve Bank. So the Federal Reserve Bank just bought $1 million in cash for $450. Can you do that? What happened to equal opportunity, equal access, equal rights? Why is the government providing this service only for a single corporate monopoly? And then what happens? After the government takes in receipt of $350, delivers the $1 million to the Federal Reserve Bank, a private corporation, who now owns the notes that are in circulation. They're not United States dollars. They're Federal Reserve notes owned by the bank. What does the bank do with them? Do they just pass them out? Like they printed them and pass them out? No. What they do is they lend it back to the federal government and into the private sector. But they lend it back to the federal government. Do you think they lend it back to the federal government at the $450 that they paid to receive the notes? No, that's not what happens. They lend the money back to the federal government at full face value plus interest. $1 million, $1,035,000. $35,000 every single year on every million borrowed for the rest of all eternity. Because you can never pay it back. If you pay back all the debt, you won't have any currency in circulation to conduct the daily transactions required by society. The paper money won't be there. That's what happened in the Depression. They didn't have any paper currency, and it resulted in the Depression because the banks stopped lending it because the collapse in the market ate up all the collateral, and the banks didn't see a credit-worthy public anymore. They stopped lending. Every month, more money is removed from circulation by the servicing of what debts can be serviced, and as the currency supply gets smaller and smaller, people run on the banks to get the currency, and they hoard what currency they have, and they stop buying, and the country falls into a depression. So the bank buys $1 million for $450. It lends it back to the government for full face value, and then your government owes that money to the bankers, and that's why you have a $35 trillion national debt. It's accumulated through the borrowing of money that was printed out of thin air and sold to the Federal Reserve Bank, who has a monopoly on currency and credit. The whole thing is completely unconstitutional, and it has led to the class warfare system and the elite and the peon system that America has been reduced to because of this unconstitutional currency monopoly that the Federal Reserve Bank possesses, a private corporation. They buy their money, $100 bills, for 3.5 cents a note. Do you understand what that means? That kind of financial power cannot be opposed, anywhere where they apply the leverage of this power of printing cash, they'll control that element of society. In the Depression, they used it to take over and consolidate all of the millions of small farms that failed and turn them into 6 large corporations that now control the world's food supply. And guess who owns the stock of those corporations? That's right, the same people that own the stock in the Federal Reserve banks. Who are those people? Nobody knows. They're not allowed to be audited. Nobody knows. They're not allowed to be audited. It's a secret organization that has seized control of the entire federal government by seizing control of our currency through an unconstitutional monopoly and an unconstitutional statute that declares Federal Reserve notes to be legal tender. That's not a power Congress possesses. The Constitution says no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a legal tender in payment of debt. That's a deprivation of a power for the states to possess to declare legal tender, and a failure to grant any such power to the federal government. As a power not granted to the government and prohibited to the states, legal tender is a power reserved to we the people. And of course, the only people who should be allowed to determine what will be acceptable in a transaction as payment is the 2 parties conducting the transaction. Furs for gunpowder and bullets, or cash for a car. The 2 parties conducting the transaction are the only 2 parties that have authority in a free society to dictate or determine and agree upon what the terms of payment and product in return will be. It's not a power the federal government possesses. This is how they have seized control of everything, is by working in cahoots with a private group of bankers that have a monopoly on currency and credit, and control society and dictate with the interest rate whether or not jobs will be created or destroyed, and where wealth will be directed within the society. This is not a free economic capitalist society. Capitalism isn't just a free competition for goods and services. It's a free competition for, it's in the name, capital, where banks compete with each other, offering different interest rates for different ventures with different risks involved. It's not a monopoly on interest set by a single corporate entity that controls and owns almost, not quite literally, but through controls, they do control the entire banking system and determine what banks will survive and what banks will not. So, there's your problem, folks, is you've given away the power of your money. And when you give away the power of your money, you give away your nation, you give away your government, you give away your future. So, there's our problem. What are we going to do about it?